Like many people, I found the life-changing magic of tidying up, well, life-changing. I come from a family that loves to collect stuff. My mom has multiple closets full of clothes. My dad has an entire floor in his garage dedicated to his hobby of building boats. My grandpa was the proud owner of a stack of Kindles, each with a different assortment of titles. He also owned not one, not two, but 3 copies of Marie Kondo's bestseller. Naturally, I picked up on their habits. As a kid, I loved to have collections of my own things. I collected rocks and displayed them on cardboard boxes lined up in my room. I collected postage stamps, and I rarely got rid of anything. Years worth of school papers and old clothes and items from past hobbies piled up in my closet, and they threatened to cause an avalanche whenever I opened those closet doors. Luckily, in my 20s, before I moved out of my parents' house and into an apartment of my own, I read Marie Kondo's book. She completely changed my perspective. The thought of being surrounded only by objects that sparked joy that I truly loved freed me to finally let go of so much clutter that I had been keeping, and I gave away bags and bags of things before I moved out. There was, however, one part of her narrative that horrified me. I now keep my collection of books to about 30 volumes at any one time. 30 is not enough. Even worse, here's how she decided to keep pieces of books that only moderately inspired her. I finally decided to rip the relevant page out of the book. Pasting pages into a notebook was also a pain, so I simplified the process by slipping them into a file instead. This only took 5 minutes per book, and I managed to get rid of 40 books and keep the words that I liked. I was extremely pleased with the results. She murdered 40 books. It has become very popular among minimalists to declare that print books are just no longer necessary. You do not need all of this stuff. You can get rid of them, put them all on a Kindle, and then all of the books that you ever want to read will be contained in this one beautiful, slim little volume. Book hoarding is not just old-fashioned, it's unfashionable. But I hear some people around here have not mended their ways. I've gotten varying reactions when people see my book collection. Many people do like it. They're surprised to see this many books in a house. They say, people don't read like this anymore. They wonder where I got them all. Some people say, what will you do when you move? Here are 5 reasons why, even in a process of decluttering my house that I've done in the last year or so, I decide to keep a lot of my print books. Reason number 1 is aesthetics. Admittedly, I love the aesthetic. I love the look of having these beautiful bookshelves full of books. When I was a kid, I didn't dream of having a big house. I didn't want any new cars. I wanted to have my own private library, and that was something that I just dreamed that I would have when I was an adult. I was fortunate enough to receive gift cards to bookstores for birthday presents and for Christmas presents. I also saved my allowance money or any money that I made from random jobs. I would go to the library book sale. The public library in our town would have a sale every season or so. On the last day, you could fill a whole paper grocery bag of books for just $1 or $2. In my room, I only had a small bookshelf, and so the books ended up in stacks on the floor, and I just dreamed of the day when I would have an apartment of my own. I could have a whole wall full of shelves, and I am happy that I've achieved that. It was something that I wanted for a long time. I find it very relaxing to look at all the books and to have this endless stack of opportunities of things to read. I have read maybe about half of the books that I own. Many of them are books that I want to read. Also, they're books that I do reread frequently in my collection. During the pandemic, having this personal library was wonderful because I didn't have to order any books. I had plenty of books to read, and it was very soothing to have during that time, and all the time. Overall, I think it really lends a sense of peace and serenity to my apartment that the focal point is a wall of books rather than a television, and it shows that this is where the emphasis and one of the activities that we like to do here is reading and thinking. The second big reason that I've kept my print book collection is in modern life, it is so good to get away from the screens. If you work in an office like I do, probably most of your day is spent looking at a computer. Then when you come home, you might have to look something up on the internet or you might watch TV. In free moments, it's really hard these days not to look at your phone, not to scroll through the social media. When you have a book in front of you, it is such a different sensation when you have a print book. I am no snob about different book formats. I read in any form. I've read books on my phone. I love audiobooks. I get books on my phone through the library, and I love listening to those when I'm driving or when I'm gardening. I also now do read books on a Kindle. I was resistant to the idea of a Kindle for a long time, but I did get a Kindle passed on to me from my grandpa. Thank you, Grandpa. He had such a love of reading, which is something that many people in the family share, so it's very special to have a Kindle that was his. I guess I'm silly. I'm resistant to technology sometimes, but guess what? Having a Kindle is great for when you're traveling. Also, the library does have a lot of titles that are available through Kindle to check out. All of that being said, there is something that is irreplaceable about the feeling of holding an actual book in your hands. It's much less likely to end in distraction. There are no notifications happening. There are no other tabs to click on. It's just you and the book. As you move through the book, you can actually feel your progress as you turn the pages. That's a feeling that these other forms of media just don't replicate. I find that reading in printed format in particular very much lends itself better to concentration, to being fully present with the book. Whereas some of these other forms of media, because they're more screen-like, or because with an audiobook you may be doing other things, I do try to really concentrate when I'm listening to an audiobook. But there's something about reading a printed book that's the only task that you can be doing. And so it lends itself very much to concentrating on the book, to being quiet, to having that time to reflect as you're reading. That is really irreplaceable. Something else I really love about printed books as opposed to digital books is they have such a sense of history. Many of the books that I own are on the old side, especially because I do buy them used. Many of them have inscriptions, like this one. This is a biography of Franz Liszt. On the inside, it was inscribed to somebody in 1926 as a Christmas gift. That's really special. That's something that you would never get from a digital book, which just kind of exists in this internet ether. The file has no history. Whereas this is a book that somebody owned. It was given by somebody as a gift to somebody else, and eventually it made its way to me, where I hope I'm giving it a good home. It's a piece of history that you just don't have with those digital book files. Even with the cheap paperbacks, I love that you can see when a cheap paperback has been very well loved. This is my copy of Jurassic Park, which was already rather beat up when I acquired it as a used book. Because I love it so much and I read it probably about once a year, it has quite some wear and tear on it. That makes it more precious to me. Vladimir Nabokov said, "One cannot read a book, one can only reread it." I love to reread my favorite books, which brings me to the third point. The third reason that I have kept my print book collection is the ease of access to the books. I have a roster of certain books that I reread every year or every 2 years. My favorites that I just cannot get enough of rereading that text, appreciating how masterful the author's work is. And for those books, sometimes I read them at certain times of year. Sometimes the urge comes on suddenly. I might see something when I'm walking around or hear a piece of dialogue in my day-to-day life that reminds me of the book, and I'm just like, I must reread this now. One of the books that I reread every year is The Secret History. It's one of my absolute favorites. I also love to reread all of Tana French's work. She is this incredible Irish crime author. In the autumn, when it's bleak, I just have this urge to reread Tana French. When the urge comes on to reread a book, I need that book immediately. I don't want to go to the library. I don't want to have to wait to get a hold if the book is on hold. I don't want to have to stop by the bookstore. If it's on my shelf and I can just grab it, that ease of access really does matter to me for my absolute favorite books. The fourth reason I've kept my collection of printed books is because of censorship and digital licensing. This one is a little darker than the other reasons. The other ones are, I think, mostly positive. When you get a book on your Kindle, you actually do not own that book. Like the music that you might have through a subscription service, it's licensed to you, but you do not actually own that file. And what that means is the company, often Amazon, can remove or edit that book from afar. In 2009, very ironically, Amazon removed people's copies of 1984 from their Kindles because Amazon had been notified that it didn't have the proper rights for those files. The books just disappeared from people's Kindles. More recently, Puffin Books, which was Roald Dahl's publisher, has decided to release sanitized new editions of his books with words removed that they felt were no longer appropriate to modern day. As part of that, there have been reports that ebook versions of those books were automatically updated, erasing the old versions that people had on their e-readers. When you have a digital book, something can happen to it. You can lose access to power. If the power goes out and your Kindle isn't charged, you may not be able to read. Also, these corporations may decide to update the book without telling you. They may decide to erase it. We have no way of knowing in the future which books will be deemed inappropriate, that have to be edited for future readers or for future ethical considerations. I like to know that my books are actually owned by me and that I have access to history, which is not always palatable and is not always nice, but that the history is there and that I have access to it. The fifth reason that I've kept my printed book collection is I find it very inspirational. I love having the collected works of people that I admire on my shelves, to be reminded that there is such great writing and thought out there. I like to look at all the books sometimes and just think about the books that I've so loved reading, that I've spent so much time in the company of these authors. So that was the 5 reasons that I have chosen to keep my print book collection, even in a period of otherwise fairly strict decluttering. I'm somebody that I think will never be minimalist. I do like my collection still. I love to have a lot of things around me, but with Marie Kondo in mind, I have been decluttering things that no longer bring me joy. And I think it is important for book lovers that she has a point. You don't want to just indiscriminately collect books for your entire life because it can very quickly get out of control. My collection numbers in several hundred books, and recently this year I did take a look at it and thought, okay, there are some of these books that I could bear to part with. That's sort of the standard that I've been using. It's, would I be sad to see this go? And I actually have, with her harsh advice in mind, gotten rid of several bags of books this year. I've passed them along to other people that I know will enjoy them. I remember reading somewhere that the author Shirley Jackson had thousands of books in her home. I believe my collection, although I have not counted it, numbers in the hundreds. Thousands of books, like 20,000 books, I think I read somewhere. That's a little scary. I mean, that's a little too much. I think. I think maybe she could have gotten rid of a few of those. Share what your books mean to you down in the comments. If you liked this video, please hit the like button, and I will see you next time.